One of the things that also was interesting in that regard was that those scenes that you had like on the tour bus when you were just sitting there with him and he was having fun and he had the kid who was part of the traveling band and he was like becoming friends with him. It seemed like, and again, like just this guy has a lot of stories to tell. Was there anything that came up when you were just on the bus that was a fun story that worked really well in your head and you really remembered you wanted to fit it into the project and then it just didn't work with the story you're trying to tell in the film?
Well, one of the stories that wasn't in the film was that as the progression of the tour, as his Alzheimer's progressed, he started getting, you saw it with yelling at Kim in the room about his tooth, but one of the things that he obsessed on was Bill McClay, who was his tour manager, who was the foundation of the tour. None of this would have happened if it hadn't been for this guy who managed to wrangle all the people and deal with Glenn's, slightly unpredictable behavior and make sure everything worked and that he made it to every show. And at a certain point, and this is a guy who'd worked with Glenn for 35 years or something. And one day we heard that Glenn was upset with Bill, and it turned out that he didn't recognize Bill. And like, who is this guy on the bus? And this started, and now Bill is a sweet guy, been with Glenn for years, understands the disease, but he took it personally. He was like, oh my, how could this happen? How could Glenn be upset with me? And so it progressed to a point where there was one time on the bus where there was a question about where they were going to at the next stop, and Glenn was confused and thought that Bill was somehow causing them to go to a place that Glenn didn't want to go. And there was quite a scene, and it was quite dramatic, and we shot it in the bus. We happened to be there. It wasn't violent, but it was quite intense, and it was in the movie for a long time. And at the end of the day, part of this balance of darkness and lightness, we took it out because it just didn't seem to work in the balance. It didn't. It made it pushed it a little too dark. It was.
I think that's one of the key things to the journey is the light and the dark and the balancing act, because a little bit goes a long way. You make a movie about a drug addict. You don't want to see him shooting up all the time. He does it once, you got it. And so I think that's the challenge of the filmmaker here is to, in your choice lies your talent, and hopefully we balanced it as filmmakers so that the audience could have an experience that was not only educational but uplifting and entertaining and reflected Glenn.
But the thing is, it was a great scene. And so, in a way, with that scene with Bill and freaking out, it was like, what great drama. So it stayed in for a long time, and it was hard for us to take it out.
But the scene with Ashley and him about his teeth, and that it was the same beat. It was like you get to see this man's agitation, and that he's having a hard time. So what do you do? And it was very interesting. We had several screenings when we were first showing it to the public, and people whose families had suffered from Alzheimer's, some of them would say, I can't take this. This is too much. And please back off. This was one of the, it was in at that time. Yeah. And then Kim, on the other side of it, would say, put more in. Because she was going through it. And it was so intense what she was going through. Right now she thinks the film's perfect. I mean, we got to the place where we've got the balance. But it's a fine dance to tell this story, because I don't know, like I said, I didn't know anything about Alzheimer's when we started this journey, and now have become absolutely determined to, hopefully Glenn's going to change the world in the conversation about what this is and what we need to do about it. But he's going to do it by being Glenn, not by pounding you over the head, with statistics or sadness. Glenn would want you to laugh. He'd probably want you to cry a little.